Welcome to Simply Defensive. I'm Josh Mason, and with me, my co-host Wade Wells. On this episode, I'm going to ask Wade a little bit more about detection as code. Uh, Wade works in defensive cybersecurity, and I'll let him get into that a little bit. But I've heard his talk at Hack RedCon on detection as code. He's about to give a talk this weekend, and I'll let him talk about that. So, Wade, what does your weekend look like?
Yeah, it's gonna be a long one. So, as recording this, right, it's Thursday, so fly out to Chicago for Blue Team Con, which will be great. And then I am presenting with Detection as Code on Sunday, which is the last day of the con, and then fly back Monday. It's gonna be a little long, not too bad though. It's like a
Not bad.
4 6 hour flight, I think. I honestly don't remember. But this you're right. This talk is something that I've talked about before. I gave it at Hack Space Con, so you're
Mhm.
close, but no cigar.
Yeah, Hack Space Con.
Uh, which
Hack
is
Red's
also
coming up.
one.
Yeah,
Yeah, it is coming up. I wanted to go, but I can't swing it with the Wild West Hackin' Fest also being in October.
same, same.
Yeah. Anyways, so it's very similar talk, but this time I'm actually giving the talk with one of my good friends, David French, who works over at Google. Him and I have been giving this talk separately, here and there, and we've actually collaborated a lot in the past. So he's
Nice.
heard my talk. I've heard his. I've given him a lot of good notes. I will admit he's given his talk a little bit more prestigious of settings. Like he got to go to a couple international venues to talk. I
Ooh,
know one of them was in Ireland. I want to say it was like B-sides Belfast. Was Belfast in Ireland? No.
yeah.
B-sides Dublin. I think it was B-sides Dublin. Yeah.
Okay.
Which super cool. But pretty much the detection as code, right? A lot of people get it wrong what
Mm,
it actually is, like right off the bat. Just because when you think detection as code, you're thinking like Python as detections, very similar to what Panther does, right?
oh, sure,
Where,
sure.
yeah, where they're just like reading logs and you actually write code. A lot of the larger organizations actually have something like homegrown similar to that.
Hmm.
So if you look at like Microsoft or Google for their detection engineers,
Hmm.
it's way different than what us other people are doing where we're using security tools. They're actually
Sure.
writing some gnarly Python scripts. But detection as
Ah,
code is pretty much, yeah. Does that make sense?
it
Like,
does. It does.
yeah,
And like,
yeah.
I've got a little bit of an idea. We're doing infrastructure as code
Okay.
for some labs that we're building out. So I'm familiar with what that looks like for folks who don't know. As code in my mind is a lot of um you're actually utilizing some sort of language in uh infrastructure as code. It's a lot of YAML and JSONs, and I think that it's similar in your case. um
Very, very similar.
and you've got a whole, in most cases, like a Git that you're committing the code to. You like a whole pipeline of ticketing and testing before it goes into production. And for infrastructure, for labs, that looks like we've got a main repo, a main branch, and each of us will work on a lab. And before we push it up, we got to make sure it's not going to interfere and that it's final and all that stuff. But for what does it look like for detection? Because like, is that going to go into production? Is that like something it goes live at the end? But
Yeah. Yeah.
that might
No,
be jumping
no,
in too far.
it's very, very similar, right? So it's exactly the same thing. We're using more software developer principles in order to build out our detection logic and stuff like that. So you could definitely like use something like a Sigma, right? And you could write it all those and then have the translators go off and translate it all into your certain tools, whether you're using like Splunk, QRadar, or whatever, Sentinel-1, CrowdStrike, or Carbon Black, that type of stuff, and have it translate to those. But and the funny part is like David and I have both made it completely differently, which is also kind of weird. Like there's a lot of similarities, but there's a lot of differences.
Yeah.
So you are using that initial code in order to push these detections to your particular security tools, right? So in my instance, I have used Splunk as one, and then I was also using a couple more of open source EDRs. So I
Hmm.
was playing around with Velociraptor, and what else was it? And Wazoo was another one that I was looking at to try to create a connector for.
Mm.
And so, much like your infrastructure as code, the detection as code is going to be ran in these YAML files, these YAML config files.
Mhm.
And you have to create a format and how you want to keep your detections, right? It's just going to be like the title, the definition. Maybe you're using like a GUID as an ID, and
Right.
then maybe some more like confidence ratings, severity ratings, bunch of different stuff.
Mhm.
And when you create one, say you create it for Carbon Black, right? You create this rule, you upload it to your Git repo, or you upload it to your repo using Git, and then it goes through a change control process. And at the end of the day, someone accepts it, and then that detection gets pushed out to the proper security tool.
Okay.
Very, yeah, very, very, very similar, just like how you were saying checks and balances, right? But with the detection stuff, it's pretty much you're just having all of your detections in one single place where
Mhm.
you can tune and edit all of them, right? And then you can easily manipulate all of your detections across multiple security tools in one repo. At
Interesting.
least that, right? And so that's the way I think about it as detection as code wire. There's definitely other definitions of people thinking detection as code is more of just a software developer lifecycle means of detection, which is definitely true. There's a
Sure.
bunch of good blog posts and discussions out there. But
Mm.
at the end of the day, I think the real reason why it got me really excited is I have been in like all these different security tools my entire career where I have to go in, you have to edit them. Maybe your descriptions aren't that long, like you can only do 250 characters, right? For a gnarly detection that you're writing, 250 characters is not going to be enough in order for someone else to come in and triage that detection or possibly have to tune your detection.
Mhm.
You have to try to get into that person's mindset and understand what they were trying to do. So
That
having
makes sense.
almost right, having an almost an unlimited blank because your detections are now not necessarily living in the tool. They are in the tool, but all of the guts and stuff in them are in a repo. So the descriptions and all that, whatever else you want to throw in there.
Okay.
Yeah,
So rather than relying on what the vendor has provided,
yeah.
you've now created another layer of outside of that where you can add data that wasn't possible to add otherwise. Is that
Yeah. No, that is exactly it. I actually now I can't think of the meme, but, oh, if you've ever seen the Lonely Island Boys, they have this one song or is it Lonely Island? Yeah, Lonely Island, not the
Mhm.
boys. Lonely Island, and they go like, "I'm not part of your system," right? And it's about, like, throwing the hot dog on the ground, and he's
Okay.
anyways, whenever I think of this, I go, "I don't wanna be a part of that security product's lifestyle in their system. I wanna do everything myself and make it customizable."
Mhm.
So, by you taking that chunk out of the security tool, it just, like, opens up so many gates as a triage analyst or a detection engineer.
Oh, totally.
Yeah. My initial thought about, like, all detection as code, I was like, "Alright, cool, you can, like, automate tuning all your detections from a single spot." Like, I thought that was it, really. And
Mhm.
then once I started getting into the thick of it, I was like, "Okay, this is actually really, really cool for passing knowledge to
Yeah.
more and more people."
It has me thinking, does it now allow you to like, can you test them a little easier before, uh, like, I imagine you've got to have some sort of test environment, right? Like a dev
Yeah, yeah.
environment.
Yeah, you definitely could. David and I actually kind of argue a little bit about this, right?
Okay.
So with my detection as code, the way I'm looking at it, I'm using chain control. So other detection engineers have to verify your detection logic, right?
Okay.
And then usually when you're doing detection engineering, the first thing you want to do is generate some traffic that you
Mhm.
want to detect, right? So you want to run the attack. My logic is then you don't have to run the attack later on. If
Yeah.
you've already ran the attack once, you shouldn't have to later on. But in a
Right.
traditional like DevSecOps or DevOps environment, you're gonna want to run tests automatically at the end of it.
Yeah.
So Dave talks about like running atomic red team at the very end to try to then launch your detection to verify it works.
Sure.
Or some detection programs or some security programs, actually, you can send it your query and just make sure that it's valid. Because
Mhm.
sometimes some detection, if the query is invalid, it just doesn't tell you and you just never gets anything.
Yeah.
So you definitely can do that type of testing, but it's up to you, and it kind of gets very convoluted because a lot of the
Oh,
actual security, like yeah, a lot of the alerts that you're creating nowadays, because most security vendors have a bunch of detections for the littler stuff. So
sure.
you're trying to go for the niche stuff that's in your environment.
Mhm.
and you may not be able to replicate that traffic as easily to automate it, right?
Yeah, that
So,
was going to be something
yeah.
I'll ask about in a little bit. Uh, but yeah, it sounds like that was going to be my question: is
Mhm.
why do you need a detection engineer if you've got a product and a vendor? And I feel like I know the answer to this, but
It's okay. It's
for
okay. We can
those
go
who
through it.
don't,
Yeah. Yeah. For those who don't. A lot of these rules that come out of the box are horrifically bad,
Mhm.
right? So, my one thought is like most recon rules. So a rule that would just catch some type of reconnaissance traffic is usually very hard to write, just because a bunch of tools actually already perform some type of recon, right?
right?
For instance, Palo Alto's VPN, I think it was like Pant. I can't remember the exact name of it. Used to run Who Am I all the time to understand what privileges that the application had. So if you get out of the box and get CrowdStrike or Carbon Black or Sentinel One, and they have a detection for Who Am I, you're going to need to go tune that and take off like, okay, if this VPN runs Who Am I, do not alert, right? Or
Yeah,
negate that, make some type of not logic
that
within
way you're
there.
not getting like tons of alerts that
Exactly.
are
Yeah.
internal. Yeah,
A
that makes
very
sense.
a very common thing for, I would say, more newer security operations programs is just to find a whole bunch of detections somewhere, whether it be Sigma or some other logic, and then just straight upload them to your thing, upload them to whatever platform you're doing, and be like, all right, cool, we're covered with everything. Well, uh, now everything is alerting, and you don't know what's real or what's not. If that,
Yeah,
it's just
I've done that
horrific. Yeah,
exact thing
yeah.
before in labs I built, and then you give it to a student or a customer for as a sales engineer, and all of
Mhm.
a sudden they're going through and they're like, "Has nobody tuned this?" It's like
Yeah,
I learned a lesson there of like,
yeah. Oh, I've been on that, not the vendor side, but the other person's side. I'd be like, "Hey, man, like, this is just looks like not great." The story always reminds me of, something that I used to have my high school teacher tell me,
mhm,
like, when you're going through your notes and you're highlighting stuff, right? You wanna highlight only the important things. If you highlight everything, you're not gonna know what's important, what's not. And that's very much the same thing with detections. You wanna start off with the important stuff and not just have a whole bunch of false positives and then tune your way to perfect.
mhm.
More of create a bunch of detections that are very, high confidence, right? Low false
Mhm.
positives, and then slowly build out. You can do it
Oh,
the other way, but it's gonna be a lot of work, and you may
interesting.
miss some stuff, yeah. The other thing is, like, some of these security tools, when you upload that many detections to it,
Mhm.
uh, sometimes they get a little slow or the stuff stops working as well.
Yeah, and I can imagine some like Splunk, if you're uh, creating tons and tons of logs, you're
Ooh, yeah.
having to store that, or Defender. Um, yeah, you're paying for that
Yeah.
storage.
If you're on the Splunk compute, payment, right? So you're paying for all your compute, and if you have some bad detections running that just take a bunch of compute, you're gonna have a bad time, right?
So that right there, if someone's like, "Hey, why do I need to have a detection engineer? Why do I need to have like spend the time to go through all of this, or start from the beginning?" You can make a case to like the CFO or COO that we have to go this way so we save money.
Yeah, yeah, and usually I have found in at least going on with, like, my career, the detection engineer is kind of becoming like, this could definitely be different in different places.
Sure.
But at like a private shop, the detection engineer is a little bit of that person between whoever is actually, like, managing the tool and the security analyst, right? So, for instance, I don't have access to, like, change big settings within the EDR, but I can see them all and I'm experienced to know like, hey, these flags should all be flipped. Usually the people running the tools and in my at least in my history, they're not as they're not as educated with the investigation part
Mm,
as I am. So if I can flip some more switches and make the investigator's life easier, I want to do it. So I'm trying to like work that path where I'm both building out detections, understanding the tool enough where I can make suggestions on how to manage it, as well as then like making the triage people or detection, whoever's like looking at those initial alerts, a lot healthier, or at least just like not hating their life.
yeah. There's
Yeah.
a lot of people who come to me to ask like how to get certain jobs in cybersecurity, because that's who I've made myself be in public.
I
But
know.
how would someone become like a detection engineer? Is that
Yeah.
an
No,
option that's at a lot of places or
it I look at detection engineering as a lot like you remember when threat hunting first came out and that was like the cool new thing? I think
yeah.
detection engineering is becoming kind of like that, where beforehand threat hunting and detection engineering were like rolled up into maybe security engineer, security analyst type of role. But
Mhm.
now that stuff's becoming more complicated, it's getting specialized. And the best way to do it, right, I would say is being a security analyst first. You gotta know the suck, right? You gotta understand what it's like being in the trenches. So when
Yeah.
you come out of them, you're properly treating the people who are gonna be receiving your alerts in a fair manner, right? And know what sucks and what's good. What type of descriptions you're gonna want to write. What kind of logic works better than the logic that you see right now? Or even then, like if you're making some type of tune,
Mhm.
you have to understand exactly what this detection is doing, because tuning it, you may lower the ratio of what it can actually detect, or possibly tune out the exact thing you want to detect.
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah, that would be counterintuitive or
Oh, definitely.
kind of shoot yourself in the foot on accident.
I've seen it happen where I'm like looking at a certain detection. I'm like, hey, this is supposed to detect any DAT file moving in the network. Like, why do you have say no DAT file in here? And I'm like, and they're like, oh, yeah, that was causing a lot of false positives. So, or just weird stuff like that. Usually, the triage analysts aren't as experienced enough. So that's why detection engineering is usually the next step above
Yeah, that makes sense. So that you knowing your customer because you're gonna create a
that. What was that? A dog or a child?
dog. Sorry, put the dog into
No.
doggy jail. They can't fight. They got new treats and they're fighting over it.
Uh, okay.
Um,
It's all right.
yeah. Okay. The kids snuck him in here well after we started.
Uh,
Um, usually they're fine, but they get excited about treats. You know how it is.
yeah.
Um, so that makes sense. Yeah, knowing your customer and knowing like if you're going to create a thing, how is it going to be used in the end? I
Yeah.
imagine it'd be impossible to do that job well if you haven't previously been an analyst.
Yeah. I would definitely agree with that. Like it would be very hard. I have known people who transitioned over into some type of detection engineering role that have never been an analyst, right? And don't know
Mm,
the investigation phase of a lot of stuff. Usually it just takes a little bit of time, or I always recommend as a new detection engineer, you don't want to start off at this new company as a detection engineer. You want to
mm,
go work in the SOC for like a week or two and understand what they're going through. And then in order when you get out of it, you now know all their procedures, their policies. You understand what the next steps are for most of these alerts and know how to at least make those build those and then make them better for those particular people.
where is that on a trajectory in a career? Is that like an endpoint or like where do you
Yeah. I would say it's like a middle point, right?
sure.
So in my career, I know I've told this to you, but this is probably not news to at least some of our listeners. My goal was to never be an instant response because I don't want to be on call all the time, right?
Mm,
Everyone who I've seen who's done instant response usually doesn't have the best work life ratio. So when I started getting like into like a higher level security analyst, I'm like, okay, what am I going to pivot to?
mm,
Hence, like me also learning cyber threat intelligence a lot. That was going to be my out. But then when detection engineering started getting big, which is like more of the middle ground, right? I was like, all right, I still get to be near the trenches
mhm.
and I still get to play with all the tools, but I don't get on call anymore, which is perfect. So I would say it's like in the middle, like your next probably thing above that, like you could transition into IR or the CTI or something out, maybe internal threats,
Mhm.
but maybe possibly like going into more of architecture roles, right? You understand the logging coming in, what's generating the logging, and then what type, like knowing that is pretty prevalent. And then you also need to know how stuff is flowing, how the network is flowing in order where to build those detections within the flow, if that makes
Oh,
sense.
yeah, that does
But
make sense.
yeah. So middle ground, I'll say middle ground is kind of where you're at. You're not entry level anymore. You got some years under your belt. The one I will admit, the one thing to think about though is a detection engineer for a private company is going to be a lot different than a detection engineer, say, for a managed security provider.
Yeah,
right?
that's what I was wondering because you're at your company. Um, yeah, how different would it be for an MSSP? I know I've talked to some of my friends who are SOC analysts at an MSSP, and a lot of the times they're not controlling their like they get the alerts and they handle them, but they don't create the rules for the alert.
Mhm.
So if there's a
The
lot of
logic.
false false positives, then as you get better at it, as a SOC analyst at some of those MSSPs, you're working with your client to be like, hey, we keep seeing a ton of these and I'm going to keep sending them to you. But we could solve that by like fixing this rule on your end. Is
Mhm.
that something that you
Yeah, it all depends on, like, what type of MSP you're using, right? So some of them, like the one you're talking about is where they're just triaging those initial alerts.
Mhm,
Hopefully, they do have access to those detections where they could go tune them themselves. But at most managed security providers, at least anyone that's pushing also detections, right? Anyone that has, like, complete control over your security tools. So we'll say, like, Red Canary is a big one, right? CrowdStrike,
mhm,
Black Hills has their SOC. A lot of that times, if there's a detection engineer, that is all they're going to be doing. Whereas you're just going to be looking at logic, you're going to be looking at statistics that what the security analysts are pumping out so you can tune false positives, maybe go to different environments
mhm.
and understand, okay, these people have tool X, Y, and Z that's creating false positives, but this company over here has ABF. So you have to like understand how you're going to tune it in different environments as
Mhm.
well. Whereas me in working at a private industry, I am doing that as well as trying to understand the log flow, as well as managing tools and being asked questions of how to better create or how to better protect our network entirely, right?
Yeah.
Where I would say the managed security provider, you're much more focused, like you're laser focused just on
Oh.
logic and building good logic. Where my door is wide open for a bunch of questions coming in or building tools and stuff like that.
So my question, did you get hired to be a detection engineer or is it like a role in like the position that you were hired to
No,
that you
yeah, that's a great question. Beforehand, before my last previous company, I was definitely wearing several hats, right? So I was like the CTI guy, I was triaging alerts, and then I was also building detections. So much like threat hunting, a detection engineer is like more of it could be a role, but it could also just be it could be a job or just like an action you perform. So this company, the company I'm working for right now, who doesn't like me to mention that I work for them, so hence us not talking about it.
Yep.
Uh, they hired me for their detection engineering team. I was like one of the main hires. And then they like promoted a bunch of people from within to be also detection engineers with me. So that was pretty cool. So it's like I stepped in on a team and then the team got like pushed up around me
Mhm.
and it was pretty cool because I'm also like a lead on the team, so I get to see what everyone else is doing in their projects and give advice and mentor a little bit, which is always fun.
Yeah. That's really cool. Um, are you how are you sourcing like how are you creating your detections? Is it from going through your own logs? Is it through like intel feeds that you're getting? Is it through like the incident response team or the threat
Yes,
hunters? So I'm
all
just imagining where all that would come from.
yeah, it's like all of the above, right? So we have like there's a CTI team that'll provide us stuff. If IR comes across something, they'll throw it to us, as well as maybe insider threat. They have maybe they have an idea and they want to throw it at us. Then we're also if the triage detection team, right, the people doing the alerts, if they want something, they'll throw it at us. So it's coming literally from all over the place.
Mhm.
Plus, us as detection engineers, we understand the logging, know exactly what's coming in. I read the news all the time. I'm like, that's something I need to build a detection for within our environment. So having a board or like I will say like a Kanban board, right, of requests coming in, maybe just ideas that people had, and then working through those detections and assigning people to those detections, at least on the team, is
Mhm.
something that you have to do a lot. The other hard part is you have to kind of like weigh them out, like which detection is more important than the others, like which one fills a hole rather than this like little one that is cool, but this one is actually like a threat actor is
Mhm.
using it and it's a threat actor that's targeting us. So you got to you got to understand it's a little bit more of a customer service role too, right? Everyone's at least asking for detection for something and then you have to provide it at least at at a somewhat okay pace.
Yeah, I was wondering, is it one of those things where you're waiting for things to come in, or is there a big demand and you've had to triage and sort and Kanban it? You
Yeah.
brought it up, so I figure
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
that's kind of where you're at.
Yeah, it's a big demand, at least, like, at a larger company, that's exactly what I would expect, right?
Hmm.
Smaller companies where they don't have as much resources or people doing a bunch of different roles, right? It was much slower. It was more of me just like, "What's going on the internet?" And I'm like, "Oh, I can build a detection for that pretty quick," and then
Hmm.
run the attack. Here, okay, there's the logs, build the detection. But larger companies, there's a lot more stuff that I have to do, as well as a lot more people who have ideas as well. So a lot of the times it's like 3 for them, 1 for me half the time, I would say, with detections.
Interesting. Are there are there tools that are built for what you're like your pipeline for detection as code, or is it something that you've had to build out? Is it something that
Yeah.
like have you created a open tool that other
I
people can use?
I wanna create an open tool, but I haven't had the time, to tell you the truth. I kinda wanna, like, open source some stuff that I'm working on, but we'll see if that ever comes to fruition. Mainly, it's just completely homebrewed, right? Some
Hmm.
Python scripts and whatever, orchestration platform you're working on. So, you're using a lot of the stuff that DevOps is using, so you have to know who to ask to get the right permissions and the rights in order to do that.
Hmm.
And then run it. So pretty much it just runs a Python script, looks to see if a something is updated within the repo. And then if it is, it then goes and makes the change for you.
Okay.
Pretty easy stuff. There are a couple, there's no tools out there that just like can do that right now that literally like it's plug and play. Maybe like something that you just give, an API key to whatever your detections are, and then just goes and makes the changes and you run it from there. It honestly would be a badass, open source tool, and I will admit, this is the first time I've talked about that because I really wanna make it, and I just don't have the time. That's the big thing. But there are tools out there that already do that for you. I
Hmm.
know what it binary defense? Yeah, binary defense has a tool coming out called Impede, and they're pretty much like detection. You buy into them, and they have detections and stuff like that,
Hmm.
and you can edit the detections in Impede, and then it goes out and changes them for you, very much like a code repo would do with the change control and all that stuff.
Interesting.
Um, the
Have-
only other tool that I know that does that, oh, there's 2 others. Google Chronicle has something where it has change control and validation. I think it's called Google SecOps now. It's not called Chronicle. And then a new email security tool coming out also has the same thing. And who was that? Now I can't remember their name, and it's gonna really bug me. Sublime.
Oh.
Sublime, you can actually it doesn't you just point it at a repo
Hmm.
and then it watches for changes, which
Oh,
I
okay.
thought was really cool. Yeah.
Very interesting.
I think that's the future. Like, I think if other security tools can literally you just like, "Hey, where's your repo of detections?" And you just point it at, and then every now and then, like every 5 minutes, the tool just goes and looks and says, "Okay, what changes that are equivalent to me?" I don't think that's a hard ask for some of these security tools to implement, and it would
Yeah.
be really easy.
What would be the ideal if there was going to be like uh, an open database or repo for folks to pull from? Is that
S
would you see that as an option, or would that go
Yeah,
to kind of the opposite, like we talked about before? If you're not
you would
tuning to your use case.
yeah, that would be the thing, right? You'd wanna more of, branch off another repo or do a fork, right, of, like, we'll say Sigma, and
Mhm.
then every now and then you kind of, like, rebase it and then understand what tunes or what have they added and what tunes you have. But it would definitely you'd cause you a lot of false positives. I've seen
Yeah.
that before where someone just takes all of Sigma and then uploads it to their EDR.
Mhm.
And a finely tuned EDR of a couple alerts a day now becomes 10,000 alerts a day. And you're sitting there tuning all day to try to fix it.
Yeah. All of a sudden you brought in too much. Now it's way harder to clean up.
Yeah, yeah. Everything's popping off. Everything's critical. You don't know what's going on, and you really have to like reevaluate completely. It's a little bit. It's pretty rough.
Yeah, I could imagine. Um, I know Jerry just put out a video about CrowdSec. Um, and I kind of got me wondering, would that be a useful place to maybe look at what things could be brought in, or is that would that
Uh,
fit?
So I have the video queued up, but I haven't watched it yet.
Yeah, you've been
So,
busy.
yeah, I've been busy. So I just got off work and we started doing it, and, like, as I'm working, I'll, like, just scroll YouTube and see what videos I wanna watch later if I'm too busy to watch, not if I'm too busy that I can't watch a video or have it played in the background. So I have a queue, like, ready to go once I get off work that I can, and that is one of them. So you tell me. I know what CrowdSec, the basics of it is. It's like open sourcing detections, right? Is that the
Yeah,
basic
open
premise?
sourcing things to look at. Like, hey, we found this. Maybe you want to take a look at it. Maybe you want to bring it into your environment. Here's like how we did it, that you could just pull it straight in. Um, and it sounds useful. Uh, from like, I don't work in that direction.
Yeah, yeah.
Part.
It could be useful. I don't know how, like, a lot of the times, a lot of detections are just so form fit just for your company. Like, every
Hmm.
now and then you find one that just perfectly works. Like, I will admit, uh, Red Canary, they always push out some really good detections in all of their reports.
Hmm.
Theirs have worked for me without any tuning a lot. That is to at least put them on a pedestal. I really like looking at their intel and reading their detections, but that
Hmm.
rarely ever happens. Usually I'm living in like a Sigma repo and trying to understand what other people are building and how to build it. And
Yeah.
then Splunk has its like Splunk security content, which are detections that you should be able to just easily migrate in if you're using data models, right?
Hmm.
But it almost never works out. You always have to do some type of tweaking. So it would work. I would imagine you would plug in CloudSec, or was it
CrowdSec.
CrowdSec? CrowdSec, you'd probably plug it in. You'd probably have to sit there for a month and really understand it and tune it. And then
Mm.
after that, I would imagine it would work really, really well, which you'd probably need some type of analyst just assigned or detection engineer just assigned to CrowdSec.
Check out the video, and if it is something that we should spend an episode on, like maybe
Ah,
grab someone. We'll talk about that later.
no, that's a
But
good idea. No, that's a good idea. I like that. I like it.
some of this detection as code kind of has me thinking about like red teaming or purple teaming. Um, Taking people who are offensive minded and not just like a pen test report of like, hey, fix these vulnerabilities, but on more of a red team, like, did you see me doing this stuff? And if you didn't see me doing this, like, would that be a cool thing for pen testers or red teamers to put in their report of
Yeah, no,
like
it,
tune for this?
tune for this, and like, or you tuned this out when this shouldn't be tuned out type of deal, right? Or
Hmm.
here's a hole you're missing. No, definitely. One thing that's kind of cool about detections code that I didn't hit on is usually all your detections are in a repo, right? A lot
Hmm.
of the times with security teams, they don't like to give access to the security tools, right? They usually
Right.
provide a large amount of data, so you do not want to give that access out, especially depending on how your relationship is with your internal red team. Sometimes people do not want that.
Oh yeah.
So, but you could give them access to this repo and understand all your detection logic, and then they can try to go and pivot around all your logic, right? And try to make their way through, which I think is exactly what detections code. One of the highlights of it is easily shareable. You can easily share your detections
Hmm.
without giving away like all of your security tool to somebody.
Yeah.
Very similar with like IR, right? If
Hmm.
IR is doing threat huntings all the time, they can go look at your repo and understand where the holes are at and hunt in those particular holes. Or CTI can do reports and say, okay, we have detections for X, Y, and Z. So we
Hmm.
don't need to write that or look those up in a report. Let's look for DEF instead.
Yeah. Yeah. That makes a lot of sense. Man, where can people get more information on this? I know you guys are doing a talk, but
Yeah,
is
yeah,
there are there YouTube videos? Is there GitHub
yeah.
repos or blogs?
There's a decent amount of blogs and a decent amount of videos. So David has several of his videos on YouTube. If you look
Mhm.
up David French Detecting As Code, you'll find it. He also has a couple blog posts through Google called DAC tutorials. Antov Chukvikin, I can't say, he's a big guy at Google. I can't say his last name. He has a very, very good blog post of exactly what detection as code is and how
Okay.
it completely goes through. Yeah. Couple other people to look up are like John Tucker, has a good one, Kyle Bailey, and then like I think Jose Hernandez has one as well. Google Elastic or Google has a bunch of talking about it. The one
Hmm.
thing one thing I don't like about a lot of that is though, it's a lot of vendor talk about detection as code and not a lot of people who are just doing it as a shop, if that
Hmm.
makes sense.
Sure.
But yeah. Yeah.
More of
And
this is what we're doing for our tooling, or
yeah, yeah, that's about it. Or like this is how we did it with our particular tool. Whereas in like the way I'm doing it, right? When in my home lab, I'm doing it for a bunch of different tools rather than just doing it for like just doing it for CrowdStrike, just doing it for Splunk, or just
hmm
doing it for Google SecOps type of deal.
is there is it one of those roles where if you get known for it, like a company might like try
Yeah,
to
yeah,
scoop you
yeah,
up to create rules for
yeah.
Falcon or
I I would say the detection as code part is hot right now. I have had several people hit me up and be like, "Hey, can you come work for us? Come do detection as like implement it here."
sure.
Especially when I'm a lot of the times I'm talking to people about it and not even presenting it to try to like see if anyone else is doing it to try to get ideas. And
Mhm.
that's how David and I started talking about it and built it up. He was like one of my first people that I asked about it, and usually, that, like, moves some people around, then next thing you know, I'm getting hit up like, "Hey, like, we want detection as code. Do you think you could come in and build it at our place?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I could build it, but I'm not looking for a job right
Yeah, yeah. You're
now."
happy where you're at.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Like it's got benefits. Um,
Yeah, that hence me wanting trying to create some type of open source tool around it that
yeah,
people could just
totally.
easy deploy, yeah.
Thank you everyone for joining us. If you enjoyed this, like it, share it, follow us so you get more of it, and hit us up with it. Yeah. Any comments or questions you've got so that we can answer those in following episodes. You'll have a great one. Bye bye.